I'm the wife, I'm prettier, and I just show him my boobs and I win the argument.
Come on, man. We got some of the toughest old folks in our family. They don't wear no damn sunscreen. What you talking? No way. No way. My granddaddy was working in the heat. My grandma working in the heat. They ain't had no sunscreen. They was working. They was getting it in. Like, go in the kitchen and get the
Me and my husband are the same color. Look at us. We the same color.
We show.
Hi, my name is Kelly Native Child Mays. I am a survivor, a healer, a licensed therapist, and a poet. And on occasion, a good day, I'm a mom. I think when you're talking about domestic violence, there's a lot of common misconceptions. One of the most important ones, I think, is that they think that it's not a community problem, that it's a problem just with the survivor and the person that's victimizing them. And actually, it's not. Domestic violence is a problem that the community, the whole community, is affected by, and that the community should be involved in helping that survivor. It affects communities economically, it affects communities as far as mortality, it affects future generations. And I think that we need to do more to help survivors and to eradicate domestic violence altogether.
January 7th, a domestic violence expert who saved countless lives couldn't save her own. What you're about to hear will shake you to your core, because the person who killed her, he was supposed to love her. Welcome to Crime Story Watch, where every story will keep you on the edge of your seat. These are not just cases, they're lives forever changed. Subscribe and hit the bell. Don't miss out on the truth waiting to be uncovered. This story takes us to Westland, Michigan, a blue-collar city just outside Detroit, where dreams go to die and violence hides behind closed doors. With a population of around 84,000, Westland sits in Wayne County, one of the most dangerous areas in Michigan. The crime rate here is 40% higher than the national average, and domestic violence calls flood the police department daily. It's a place where abandoned houses sit next to working families trying to make it, where the American dream feels more like survival mode. Strip malls, fast food joints, and apartment complexes stretch for miles, connected by roads that have seen better days. This is where people land when Detroit gets too expensive or too dangerous, but it's not exactly paradise either. In 2024, Westland recorded over 200 domestic violence incidents just in the first quarter. That's more than 2 cases every single day. Police here know the drill. They show up, separate the couple, maybe make an arrest, but the cycle continues. The system is overwhelmed, underfunded, and frankly tired of the same faces appearing on the same police reports week after week. But here's what makes this story different. In this city plagued by domestic violence lived a woman who was supposed to be untouchable. Kellyanne Mays, 49 years old, wasn't just another victim waiting to happen. She was the expert, the one who saved others, the woman who knew every trick abusers used because she'd escaped them herself. Kellyanne Mays wasn't just any woman. She was a warrior, a poet.
Helped me heal. Definitely using poetry as a vehicle. When I'm writing, it's the most honest and the most real I am with myself. And it's helped me go and reach into dark places that I wouldn't otherwise be able to talk about, experiences that I wouldn't be able to talk about, and to bring them out and share them with people. It's empowered me, it's empowered other survivors to share their experiences. So definitely poetry has helped me heal. My daughters have helped me heal because I look at them and I'm hopeful for a world without domestic violence. I know statistically that they are at risk, but I'm hopeful for them. I'm hopeful for me. I'm hopeful that these stories that I'm sharing will be a tool, a guide for them.
A survivor turned savior. Going by her creative name, Native Child Brown, she spent years pulling other women out of hell itself, abusive relationships that could have killed them. Her voice carried weight in the domestic violence community across Metro Detroit. When Kelly spoke at events, rooms went silent. When she shared her poetry, grown men cried. She lived in a modest home on a quiet street in Westland, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone else's business, but pretends they don't. Her house was a sanctuary for women fleeing abuse. She'd let them crash on her couch, helped them file restraining orders, drove them to court hearings when they were too scared to go alone. At 49, Kelly knew all the signs because she'd lived through them. She'd escaped her own nightmare back in 2010, clawing her way out of an abusive relationship that nearly killed her. That experience transformed her into something fierce. She literally wrote the playbook on how to survive domestic violence. She gave speeches at community centers, saved lives at poetry slams, and became the voice for women who'd lost theirs. Her daughters adored her. Her twin sister Stacy was her best friend. Her father, Ralph, watched with pride as his little girl turned her trauma into triumph, helping other women find their way out of darkness. Kelly had built something beautiful from something broken, and everyone in Westland's domestic violence community knew her name. So how does someone like that end up dead at 49? How does the teacher become the victim? That's the question that reveals something terrifying about domestic violence that even experts don't want to admit. Knowledge doesn't always equal protection. And sometimes the people who save others can't save themselves. Meet Jimmie Lee Brown, also known as Super MC, a 46-year-old man whose life reads like a cautionary tale about fame, failure, and what happens when dreams die hard. Brown wasn't some random stranger who wandered into Kelly's life. He was her husband, the man who was supposed to protect her, love her, and build a future with her. To understand how this nightmare unfolded, we need to dive into Brown's world, the gritty streets of Highland Park and Detroit, where hip-hop culture promised escape, but delivered mostly disappointment. Brown grew up believing he was destined for greatness, that his rap skills would lift him out of poverty and into the spotlight.
Faking, I'll expose him, fucking I'm the chosen. Eddie Murphy, golden child, knife holding. Damien walking the Christ path, the right omen. Nigga, the right moment.
For a brief moment, it seemed like he might be right.
Rebels, kill their wheel, with the wheel and kill. Keep it real and steal in these fields of fields. Bruce from popping and use with jaw me. And take out your block, it's our future calling. It's so confusing, y'all. I use the brawler, pop, pop, pop till your producer fall.
In the early 2000s, when Eminem was putting Detroit rap on the map, Brown caught a break that thousands of aspiring rappers would kill for. He got cast in 8 Mile, the movie that would define Detroit's hip-hop scene forever. Picture this, a young Jimmie Lee Brown on set with Eminem, thinking he was about to become the next big thing. He probably imagined red carpets, record deals, groupies, all the trappings of rap stardom. But here's where the story gets dark. Brown's scenes didn't make the final cut. While Eminem went on to win an Oscar and cement his legacy, Brown faded back into Detroit's underground rap scene, carrying the weight of what could have been. That kind of rejection doesn't just sting, it festers. It creates a particular kind of rage that men like Brown carry for decades. Psychologically, this matters more than you might think. Studies show that men who experience professional rejection, especially in highly masculine fields like hip-hop, often redirect their frustration toward the women in their lives. They can't control Hollywood, record labels, or success, but they believe they can control their partners. Brown spent the next 2 decades grinding in Detroit's rap scene, performing at small venues, releasing mixtapes that barely anyone heard, watching younger artists pass him by. He was a middle-aged man, still chasing a dream that had already left him behind. That's a special kind of psychological torture, being close enough to success to taste it, but never close enough to actually achieve it. Then came 2020, and everything changed. Brown was in a serious car accident that left him with a traumatic brain injury. Now, I'm not making excuses for what he did to Kelly, but neuroscience tells us something crucial about brain injuries. They can fundamentally alter personality, impulse control, and emotional regulation. The frontal lobe controls our ability to think before we act, to feel empathy, to regulate anger. When that area gets damaged, people can become violent, unpredictable, and dangerous in ways they never were before. Family members often say it's like living with a completely different person. The man they loved is gone, replaced by someone they don't recognize. Imagine Brown's mental state in 2024, a failed rapper dealing with the cognitive effects of brain trauma, watching his marriage to Kelly fall apart. Kelly wasn't just his wife. She was successful in ways he never was. She had a platform, people who respected her, a community that valued her voice. While Brown struggled with memory problems and mood swings from his injury, Kelly was thriving as an advocate and artist. That's a toxic combination, a man with damaged impulse control watching his wife succeed while he failed. Add in the hypermasculine culture of hip-hop, where weakness is despised and women are often viewed as possessions, and you've got a psychological powder keg waiting to explode. Here's where this story gets deeply personal and heartbreaking. Kellyanne Mays wasn't just a domestic violence advocate, a poet or a mother. She was half of something that most people can never understand, a twin bond that defied explanation and transcended normal sibling relationships. Kelly and Stacey Mays came into this world together on the same day, with Stacey arriving just 3 minutes before Kelly. Those 3 minutes made Stacey Twin A and Kelly Twin B, nicknames that would define their relationship for 49 years. But calling them twins doesn't capture the reality of what they shared. They were two people living as one soul split between two bodies. Based on the verified facts in this case, Kellyanne Mays and Jimmie Lee Brown were estranged at the time of her murder on January 7, 2024. They were still legally married, but living separately. Kelly in her Westland home, Brown in Highland Park. The couple had been struggling with the aftermath of Brown's 2020 car accident that left him with a traumatic brain injury. This injury affected his behavior and cognitive function, adding strain to their already troubled marriage. January 7, 2024, 10:47 a.m. Kellyanne Mays' daughters made the discovery that would haunt them forever. They found their mother's body in their Westland home, the victim of a brutal stabbing attack. The scene was horrific. Kelly had been stabbed 17 times in what investigators would later describe as a personal, rage-fueled attack. This wasn't a random home invasion or robbery gone wrong. Nothing was stolen from the house. This was intimate partner violence taken to its most extreme conclusion. The brutality of 17 stab wounds tells a psychological story. Forensic experts know that this level of overkill indicates deep personal rage and a relationship between killer and victim. You don't stab someone 17 times unless you know them, unless you hate them, unless you want to completely destroy them. Kelly's daughters immediately called 911. The emergency responders who arrived at the scene found a woman who had clearly fought for her life. Kelly had defensive wounds on her hands and arms, evidence that she didn't go down without a fight. The woman who had spent years teaching other women how to survive had fought until the very end. Stop right here for a second. If you're watching this without being subscribed, think about this. Kelly's daughters found their mother stabbed to death. These kids will never be the same. Stories like this need to be told so other women don't end up like Kelly. Hit that subscribe button right now, because if you don't care enough to click one button, what makes you think you'd actually help a woman in Kelly's situation? Don't just be another person who watches tragedy for entertainment and then scrolls away. But here's what made this case unusual from the start. The killer didn't run. Most murderers try to cover their tracks, create alibis, disappear. Not Jimmie Lee Brown. That same day, just hours after Kelly's body was discovered, Brown walked into the Westland Police Department and turned himself in. No lawyer, no elaborate story, just a simple confession. He had killed his estranged wife. The confession was as cold as it was brief. Brown showed no emotion, no remorse, no explanation for why he had just destroyed multiple lives. Kelly's, her daughters, her twin sisters, her entire families. He simply admitted to the crime and accepted arrest. This behavior pattern, the methodical violence followed by immediate surrender, revealed something chilling about Brown's mindset. He hadn't killed Kelly in a moment of uncontrolled rage. This was calculated. Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy immediately charged Brown with first-degree murder. The evidence was overwhelming: his confession, the crime scene, the history of their troubled relationship. This seemed like it would be a straightforward case of domestic violence escalated to murder. Ralph Mays had raised two daughters he was incredibly proud of, Kelly and her twin sister Stacey. But Kelly held a special place in his heart because of what she'd overcome and what she'd become. This wasn't just any father losing a child. This was a man watching his daughter's life work become meaningless in the face of the very violence she'd fought against. Ralph described Kelly to reporters as more than just his daughter. She was a minister, a psychologist, someone whose entire existence revolved around helping others heal from trauma. At Kelly's funeral, Ralph was approached by person after person telling him the same thing. "Your daughter saved my life." But the psychological weight of losing Kelly in such a violent way began crushing the family structure that had sustained them for decades. Ralph watched helplessly as grief consumed the women in his family in different but equally devastating ways. Kelly's mother couldn't handle the reality of her daughter's murder. The woman who had raised Kelly watched her escape her first abusive relationship, supported her advocacy work, and believed she was finally safe. She began deteriorating immediately after January 7, 2024. The loss was too much. Kelly's mother died in January 2025, exactly 1 year after Kelly's murder. Ralph later explained that the grief simply overwhelmed her. Kelly had been her rock, her confidant, her daily phone call. They did everything together, shared everything, and when Kelly was ripped away so violently, her mother lost the will to live. Ralph found himself dealing with a double tragedy. Not only had he lost Kelly to murder, but he'd lost his wife to grief. The family structure that had been their strength became a reminder of everything that was gone. Here's what really pisses people off about this case. Jimmie Lee Brown got to take the easy way out. This coward who stabbed Kelly Ann Mays 17 times in her own home never had to face a jury, never had to sit through detailed testimony about Kelly's final moments, never had to look her family in the eye while prosecutors laid out the full horror of what he'd done. In January 2025, almost exactly 1 year after Kelly's murder, Brown's defense team worked out a plea deal with the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Brown would plead guilty to second-degree murder instead of facing trial for first-degree murder. Let that sink in. Second-degree murder for a premeditated attack that left Kelly stabbed 17 times. Second-degree murder for killing a domestic violence advocate who was trying to rebuild her life. Wayne County has one of the highest domestic violence rates in Michigan, and prosecutors there see cases like Kelly's every single week. To them, this probably felt like a reasonable resolution. They got a murder conviction without the time and expense of a trial. Brown was going to prison either way. But to Kelly's family and the domestic violence community, this plea deal felt like another betrayal of a woman who'd already been failed by every system that was supposed to protect her. The legal maneuvering around Brown's brain injury played a major role in the plea negotiations. His defense team could have argued that the traumatic brain injury from his 2020 car accident affected his mental capacity, his impulse control, his ability to form intent. A jury might have bought that argument, especially if they felt sorry for a man dealing with legitimate medical issues. The prosecution knew that brain injury defenses are tricky. Jurors often struggle with cases where mental health or medical conditions complicate questions of criminal responsibility. Better to guarantee a second-degree murder conviction than risk a jury coming back with manslaughter or even acquittal based on diminished capacity. March 10, 2025, Jimmie Lee Brown stood before Wayne County Judge Patricia Fraissard to receive his sentence for murdering Kelly Ann Mays. The sentence, 18 to 40 years in prison. Brown could be eligible for parole when he's 64 years old. Kelly's daughters will be adults when their mother's killer has the chance to walk free. The most emotional moment came when Kelly's twin sister Stacy addressed the court. Through tears, she explained their lifelong bond.
An ecstatic happy birthday twin A from her, and I would reply, happy birthday twin B.
Then Brown spoke. His statement was pure manipulation. I wish I could say I'm sorry 1 million times and each time bring Kelly back. I have the greatest sympathy for this entire family. Sympathy. He claimed sympathy for the family he destroyed. Classic abuser behavior, making himself the victim while accepting responsibility. Kelly's father Ralph later said he personally wanted Brown to get life in prison, but respected Stacy's acceptance of the plea deal. The family made a commitment that day. They would attend every parole hearing for the next 18 years to ensure Brown serves his full sentence. Ralph Mays, already in his 70s, was dedicating the rest of his life to keeping his daughter's killer behind bars. The sentence revealed how the justice system values women's lives. In Michigan, armed robbery can get you life. Drug dealing often results in longer sentences, but brutally murdering a domestic violence advocate. 18 years if you take a plea deal. The hearing lasted less than 2 hours. Kelly's life, her work saving other women, her impact on the community, all reduced to a brief court proceeding. Brown was led away in shackles. Kelly's family was left with the reality that this was all the justice they would ever get. The domestic violence community learned that even when their most respected advocate is murdered, the system still prioritizes efficiency over accountability. Kelly's death changed nothing about how domestic violence cases are handled. Her murder became another statistic, another file, another example of justice deferred. The only change was a date circled on the family's calendar, 2043, when they'll return to court to fight keeping Brown in prison. Kellyanne Mays died on a cold January morning in Westland, Michigan, stabbed 17 times by the man who promised to love and protect her. She was 49 years old. She was a mother, a daughter, a twin, a voice for the voiceless. She was everything Brown took away in those final brutal moments. This isn't just another true crime story. This is a mirror reflecting back everything that's broken about how we handle domestic violence in America. Kelly knew every warning sign, every escape strategy, every resource available to victims. She'd helped hundreds of women leave dangerous relationships. She'd turned her own survival into a mission to save others. Yet knowledge wasn't armor. Experience wasn't protection. All her expertise couldn't stop the monster she'd married from destroying her in her own home. Kelly's daughters will never get over finding their mother's body. That image will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Every birthday, every Mother's Day. Every milestone will be marked by her absence. Brown didn't just kill Kelly. He murdered their sense of safety, their childhood, their belief that good people are protected from evil. Stacey Mays will never send another birthday text to Twin B. She'll never get that excited response wishing Twin A happy birthday. Half of her identity died with Kelly on January 7, 2024. She has to learn how to exist as one person instead of half of a pair, carrying the weight of representing both herself and Kelly's memory. Ralph Mays buried his daughter and then buried his wife, who died from grief exactly 1 year later. This man who raised a daughter strong enough to escape one abusive relationship and build a life helping others had to watch her die at the hands of another abuser. The domestic violence community lost more than an advocate when Kelly died. They lost proof that survival was possible, that knowledge could protect you, that helping others could give meaning to your pain. Kelly's murder shattered the narrative that if you just do everything right, you'll be safe. Every 26 seconds, someone in America becomes a victim of domestic violence. That's 3 people since you started reading this conclusion. While you've been learning about Kelly's story, 3 more tragedies have begun somewhere else. Kelly's legacy isn't her death. It's the lives she saved before Brown took hers. It's every woman who escaped because Kelly showed them how. It's every person who recognizes the signs of abuse because Kelly taught them what to look for. It's every survivor who found their voice because Kelly used hers to speak for those who couldn't. But her legacy is also a warning. If Kellyanne Mays, with all her knowledge and resources and community support, couldn't escape domestic violence, then the problem is bigger than individual choices. The problem is a system that treats women's lives as disposable, that gives killers plea deals, that sends the message that even brutal murder can be resolved with administrative efficiency. The brutal truth about intimate partner violence: sometimes love makes you vulnerable, sometimes knowledge can't protect you, sometimes the system fails even its own advocates. Kelly's death proves that domestic violence isn't a problem that can be solved by telling women to just leave. It's a problem that requires society to stop treating women's lives as less valuable than men's comfort. Rest in peace, Kellyanne Mays, Twin B native child Brown, the advocate who gave everything to save others and who deserved a system that would save her too. If Kellyanne Mays, a domestic violence expert with all the knowledge, resources, and community support in the world, couldn't escape her abuser, what does that tell you about the women in your life who might be suffering in silence right now? Think about it. Your sister, your coworker, your neighbor, your friend. How would you even know if they were trapped like Kelly was? What signs are you missing? What conversations are you not having? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever known someone in Kelly's situation? What would you do differently after hearing this story? If Kelly's story opened your eyes to something you didn't understand before, hit that subscribe button right now and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Are you in Michigan like Kelly was? Somewhere else in the US? International viewers, we want to know how domestic violence is handled in your country. We'll see you in the next video.